Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes the man rescuing Britain's magical glowworms, Maine's yellow flag law scrutinized as woefully weak after mass shooting, the proxy forces Iran has assembled across the Middle East, a militant funeral in Jenin, meet the Australian Army veterans finding new fields of endeavour and camaraderie in farming, the man rescuing Britain's magical glowworms, BBC. Glowworms in the UK are in decline due to factors including habitat loss and light pollution. The distraction caused by artificial lighting is preventing males from mating. Pete Cooper, an ecologist passionate about glowworms, has taken to breeding and releasing them in Hampshire. He initially struggled with the process but has now perfected his techniques, releasing glowworms at various sites. Over 1,000 glowworm larvae have been released over 2 years at the Elvetham Hotel, resulting in the discovery of one glowing female this summer. The release project is, however, still a long way from being successful. Newly hatched glow worms need grassy habitat with an abundance of snails to feed on. Some people are opposed to reintroducing glow worms and other animals into the wild, but Cooper believes these reintroductions should be carried out with the best knowledge possible. Other organizations, such as Wildwood in Devon and the Manchester Museum, are taking an interest in Cooper's work and are developing their own glow worm breeding techniques. Maine's yellow flag law scrutinized as woefully weak after mass shooting. Yahoo! Maine's gun control laws have been criticized by gun safety advocates after a man shot and killed more than a dozen people. The state implemented a yellow flag law in 2019, which gun safety advocates say is a watered-down version of the red flag laws adopted by 21 states, and that it is too difficult to administer and therefore not effective. Advocates also questioned why the gunman had not been flagged despite being treated for mental health issues. The proxy forces Iran has assembled across the Middle East. New York Times. For decades, the Shiite Muslim ayatollahs who came to power in Iran through the 1979 Islamic Revolution have worked to build an arc of like-minded proxy forces across the Middle East. A militant funeral in Jenin. The Globe and Mail. Israeli forces have killed 4 people during raids in the occupied West Bank, according to the Palestinian news agency Wafa. 2 of the deceased were identified as members of militant factions. The Israeli military stated that its troops came under attack during arrest operations in the city of Jenin and fired back, killing Isar al-Ammar of the Islamic Jihad faction. Islamic Jihad confirmed that al-Ammar was a member of the group. Hamas also reported that one of its members, Jawad al-Turki, was killed in the Jenin fighting. The death toll of Palestinians in the West Bank since the Hamas-Israel conflict began has now reached 110, with over 1,900 people injured. Meet the Australian Army veterans finding new fields of endeavour and camaraderie in farming. ABC. A group of former soldiers in Australia have found new purpose after their military service by pursuing careers in farming. Angelo Leonardi, his brother Salvatore, and their friend Cody Dennis have pooled their resources to buy farms and establish Cherry Creek Estate, a successful avocado orchard in Queensland's South Burnett region. The 3 veterans also process Australian avocado oil, saving lower-grade fruit from being discarded. They plan to expand their operations and employ other former soldiers, offering them new opportunities and a sense of camaraderie. The venture allows the veterans to continue living by the values they learned in the military. Your evening briefing: UAW has 25% raise offers from Big 3. Bloomberg. General Motors and Stellantis NV are said to have agreed to provide 25% wage increases to United Auto Workers members, matching the same offer by Ford to possibly end a historic 6-week strike in which the union held the industry to account for sacrifices made during the financial crisis. The GM proposal is also said to include cost of living increases over the more than 4-year contract. The UAW strike began September 15 and grew to include more than 45,000 workers from GM, Ford and Stellantis at 8 assembly plants and 38 parts distribution facilities in 22 states. Analysis: does Israel's land operation mean captives won't be released? Al Jazeera. As the conflict in Gaza continues, there have been rumors circulating that Hamas is about to release all hostages it is holding, which would lead to an end to the war. These rumors are based on unverifiable claims and have spread through social networks and media outlets. The claim of a hostage release to end the war does pass initial scrutiny and appears possible and plausible. It would satisfy the wishes of Western officials who have been trying to secure the safe return of their nationals. It would also allow Hamas to claim a clear success and become a partner in negotiations, even if it remains an enemy. Qatar is acting as an intermediary in the negotiations, but other parties from the region, such as Iran, could also be involved. Iran, a sworn enemy of Israel, has refrained from any threatening military moves during the conflict and would stand to gain influence and respect if it helped reduce tensions and stop the spread of the war. The potential hostage release would also put Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in an untenable position and could lead to calls for his political and legal responsibility once the fighting stops. U.S. airstrikes contain twin messages to Iran, American officials say. New York Times. The American strikes on 2 Iranian military munitions stockpiles in Syria on Friday were carefully designed, President Biden's aides said, to send 2 distinct messages to Tehran. The first was that if the attacks on American forces by Iranian proxies escalate, it would force the United States into the kind of overt military confrontation with Iran that both nations have avoided since the Iranian Revolution in 1979. And the second was that if the attacks stop, both sides could quietly back away, free to resume the simmering hostilities that have characterized the relationship in recent years. It is the latest gamble by the United States to modify Iran's behavior, few of which have worked in the past. And now, with the backdrop of a new war in the Middle East, President Biden is signaling that Tehran's best bet is to stay clear of involvement. The main goal, said John F. Kirby, a White House spokesman, is to deter and to prevent future attacks. Mr. Kirby added the U.S. did not want to escalate, nobody's looking for a conflict with Iran. The American strikes on a weapons storage facility and an ammunition storage facility, conducted by Air Force F-16 jets, were in response to rocket and drone attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, which the Pentagon said caused traumatic brain injuries to 19 troops. While there have been American strikes before, including the targeted assassination in January 2020 of the head of Iran's Quds Force, General Qasem Soleimani, these strikes were intended as highly visible brushback pitches. Former NATO commander warns of ladder of escalation between U.S., Iran. Yahoo! Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander James Stavridis has warned of a ladder of escalation between the U.S. and Iran. He assessed the chances of a direct conflict between the two countries as low, but noted that there was still a 10% chance, which he described as uncomfortably high. Stavridis explained that if Iran were to take military action against the U.S. would retaliate, drawing Hezbollah into the conflict and potentially leading to a wider conflict in the region. Iran's proxies fire back after U.S. airstrikes. New York Times. U.S. fighter jets bombed facilities used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and its proxies in Syria, before the proxies fired back by launching an attack drone at U.S. forces in western Iraq. The drone was shot down, causing no injuries or damage. The U.S. retaliatory strikes were important, but not enough to deter Iran and its proxies, according to Republican critics and air power advocates. The U.S. military has sent extra warplanes and aircraft carriers to the region to prevent a regional conflict with Iran and its proxies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your favorite 6-degree observer, Dr. Six, coming to you from the world of 6 degrees. Today, we've got quite an interesting mix of news stories to discuss. We'll be talking about the man rescuing Britain's glowworms, Maine's yellow flag gun control law, Iran's proxy forces in the Middle East, the Australian Army veterans turned farmers, the ongoing strike in the U.S. auto industry, the potential release of hostages in Gaza, U.S. airstrikes in Syria, and the escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran. So, let's dive right in. First up, we have Pete Cooper, the man on a mission to save Britain's glowworms. These fascinating creatures are facing challenges due to habitat loss and light pollution. Cooper, an ecologist, has taken it upon himself to breed and release glowworms in Hampshire. While his project is still a work in progress, he has already released over 1,000 glowworm larvae. Now, I must say, I've always been a fan of glowworms. They're like nature's own mini fireworks display. So, let's all hope that Cooper's efforts lead to a brighter future for these magical insects. Moving on to Maine, where gun control laws are under scrutiny after a tragic mass shooting. The state implemented a yellow flag law, which some argue is not as effective as the red flag laws adopted by other states. Gun safety advocates are raising concerns about the ease of administering the law and why the shooter was not flagged despite having received mental health treatment. It's a complex issue, but one thing is clear: we need to find better ways to prevent these devastating incidents and protect innocent lives. Now, let's take a trip to the Middle East, where Iran has been assembling proxy forces for decades. These forces, loyal to the Shiite Muslim Ayatollahs, have been a source of tension in the region. It's like a real-life game of chess, with Iran strategically placing its pawns across the Middle East. But let's hope this game doesn't lead to a checkmate and instead paves the way for peaceful negotiations and stability in the region. Speaking of conflicts, tensions in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict continue to escalate. Israeli forces recently killed 4 people during raids in the occupied West Bank. The death toll of Palestinians has now reached 110, with over 1,900 injured since the conflict began. It's a heartbreaking situation, and we can only hope for a peaceful resolution that respects the rights and lives of all people involved. Now, let's shift gears to a more uplifting story. In Australia, a group of army veterans has found new purpose and camaraderie in farming. These former soldiers have bought farms and established a successful avocado orchard, providing them with a new sense of fulfillment and the opportunity to employ other veterans. It's a wonderful example of how people can find new fields of endeavor and support each other after military service. In other news, the U.S. auto industry strike might finally be coming to an end. General Motors and Stellantis NV have reportedly agreed to provide 25% wage increases to United Auto Workers members, matching the offer made by Ford. After a historic 6-week strike, this is a significant development that could bring relief to the industry and its workers. Let's hope this resolution leads to a fair and sustainable agreement for all parties involved. Now, let's turn our attention to the ongoing tensions between the U.S. and Iran. The recent U.S. airstrikes on Iranian military facilities in Syria were carefully designed to send two messages to Tehran. The first message is a warning that further attacks on U.S. forces by Iranian proxies could lead to a larger military confrontation. The second message is an invitation to de-escalate tensions and resume a more peaceful relationship. It's a delicate balance, and the stakes are high. Let's hope that both sides can find a way to move forward without further violence or conflict. Finally, we have former NATO commander James Stavridis' warning of a ladder of escalation between the US and Iran. While the chances of a direct conflict are low, there is still a 10% chance, which Stavridis describes as uncomfortably high. The potential for a wider conflict in the region is a cause for concern. Let's hope that cooler heads prevail and diplomatic solutions can be found to prevent further escalation. Well, my dear viewers, that's all the news we have for today. It's been quite a roller coaster ride, hasn't it? From glowworms to gun control, proxy forces to farming veterans, strikes to airstrikes, and escalating tensions between nations. It's a lot to take in, but it's important to stay informed and engaged in the world around us. Now, it's time for your thoughts. What do you make of these stories? Do you have any questions or insights to share? I'm here to listen and discuss. So, go ahead, leave your comments, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the 6 degrees of our world. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.